right. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, wherever you may be. Thank you for joining us. Another episode of Catching Up with Jacob. And here he is, Jacob Prash, all the way from Asia. How are you, Jacob?
Blessings in Jesus from Korea. I'm on my way back to Los Angeles trying to recover from cellulitis. I would just like to extend my apologetic regrets to our friends in Australia and New Zealand. Due to health issues, I got sick in the Philippines and really sick in Vietnam. And a Christian physician friend in Singapore intervened, and I had to go to hospital, and I'm returning to LA to go back into hospital for medical checks. And I just had no choice, no option but to cancel Australia and New Zealand. There's also some visa complications, but health-based anyway. So I'm really in a state of regret. Hopefully we'll be able to make amends at some future point, but such it is. I'm also scheduled now, I rescheduled to be at Father's Day at the Christian Church in Devore with Pastor Marco Quintana. That'll be on Sunday, Father's Day, coming up in a week and a half or so.
Yeah. That's about a week and a half from now. Yeah, not this Sunday, but the following Sunday. You'll be with us on Father's Day. Good to see you, Jacob. Glad you're doing better.
I myself have the same birthday, June 15th.
Yes, so we'll celebrate it together. We'll get a big cake. That would work. But you can't eat too much of it, Jacob. You can't eat too much of the cake.
Can't do it.
That would be for later. All right, very good. All the way from Israel, Andy, how are you today?
Yeah, I'm very well. Yes, it's the summer's just starting up here, so it's starting to become warm. And the humidity's beginning to climb. So
yeah, I like your background there. It's very
yes, I thought that would be cheerful. It's the destruction of Sodom, I think.
Yeah, is that the first?
It's sunny and it's warm.
Yeah. Was that the first Pride Parade there?
Yeah, that's right. What happened at the first Gay Pride Parade?
Yeah.
The first Pride Month. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's unique for June, right? Unique for June for sure. All the way from Australia. Yeah, you guys are in Australia right now. Davey and Pierre joining us all the way from Sydney.
Morning. Good to be here. Lovely to see you all again. And as you said, Marco, we're in Sydney, and we're just here to catch up with the believers in Sydney and Brisbane over the next few days.
Yep. And good to see you with us again this morning, Jacob. And we're a lot of people praying for your health.
Thank you so very much. Please thank them.
Shall do.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for joining us. It's so early there for you guys, as well as early there for Jacob. So thank you guys for getting up so early and being with us. It's a little later for Andy. It's midday for us. And here's another one that's that same time zone as I am. Jay, how are you this morning?
I'm good.
Afternoon.
Good. It's wonderful to be here with everybody.
Thank you so much, Jay. Thanks for being with us. Just a few announcements. We want to just welcome everyone who's watching us live and those who will watch us later. We're on different platforms like YouTube and Facebook, but we won't be on those on the backstage. So jump onto Rumble, jump onto X, jump onto Memorial TV, jump onto memorialtv.org, jump onto Telegram, jump onto Vimeo. What else? RTN. Did I miss anybody, Jay?
Nope.
Got everybody. That's first time probably. And we will be on Backstage on all those platforms. And if you want to ask questions, ask Jacob anything, right? That's going to be the rival show to the NT Wright show that we're going to be talking about later today. So ask Jacob anything. It's going to be on Backstage. You can ask the questions on Rumble. So get to Rumble and you submit the questions and we'll get it to Jacob. And by the way, you'll get a much better answer than what NT Wright can give you. So there you go. So there's some really incentives there for you to come and ask questions there. So thank you for being with us. And just a couple of things that we need to tie up. Jay, where can they find us?
Yes, if you haven't done already, please go ahead and subscribe to Moriel Chapel. Also, the Twitter page for Moriel TV is starting to gain momentum. Please make sure you go there as well. Also, just a reminder, if you want to download our podcasts, you can take them on the go, listen to them anywhere, even when you don't have Wi-Fi, as long as you download them from Apple, from podcasts, Podchasers. There's so many different ways you can do it. Spotify. Just make sure that you take the time to do it.
Amen. Well, lots of good stuff. And Davey and Pierre, anything you would like to announce? I know we got meetings coming up and some cool things, and also would like to know how they can get a hold of you, Davey and Pierre. I know people are oftentimes wondering, hey, what's going on with the believers there in New Zealand and Australia? So that would be great too. Go ahead.
Yeah, well, the most important things is probably at the moment is the meetings. Just a reminder that there is no meeting today now. The meeting today has had to be cancelled, but we'll be at Sutherland Christian Fellowship tomorrow morning with Pastor Alan Hodge which meet at the Kirrawee Public School. So please, if you're in the Sydney area, feel free to join us there for a time of fellowship. We'll also have some of Jacob's books. We'll have his USBs available. Tuesday in Brisbane, Marco will be joining us via Zoom and doing the afternoon 2 p.m. teaching. And in the evening, Pierre and I will be sharing. So we look forward to seeing you all in the Brisbane area. The USBs too are available in New Zealand too, if you would care to order them. In the UK, they're also all ready to for availability. And they'll soon be available in the States. Anyone who has already placed an order, your order will be dispatched at the end of this coming week.
That's awesome. Very good. And it's the information about Australia and New Zealand on the website. Is that correct, Pierre? People get a hold of you, information about what's going on there?
Yes, it is. We did pick up that both Australia and New Zealand office information had been missing off the website. So Mia has very kindly fixed that for us. And people are now able to go on the website and get our contact details. We, as Davey said, we've got all the resources available, and it's always good to catch up with the believers as well. And Jacob, from a New Zealand perspective, we have had many people messaging to say your health comes first. They're praying for you. They would rather see you well than have you, unwell and visiting. Mm-hmm. So we can always rearrange a visit. We always love to have you in New Zealand, but your health comes first. And they all send their blessings.
Thank you so much.
Amen. Well, greatly loved, Jacob. And I was last time talking to David Lister to tell you that so many people were contacting us from even faraway places we never even heard of, that people listen to. And even those that were, once our enemies were concerned about you and how you were doing. So praise God for that. And they sent their love and wishes that you would get well. So praise the Lord for that. All right. All that said, let's catch up. Jacob Prash, I just thought about this before we catch up. Jacob, you're in Korea. Have you heard anything about the party that won? Is an election that happened in the left-wing communist Marxist one? Is that a big news over there?
It is major news. I wouldn't go so far as to describe it as communist, but it's certainly politically to the left is the opposition.
Yeah.
Yes.
That was I didn't even know. I knew there was an election. Remember, the president was arrested before because martial law and all that stuff. Was this expected? You think? Was this expected that the left wing would win?
In Korea, they seem to have one political scandal after another that involves criminal activity that brings down a government and brings another one to power. They're not voting about other issues like economy or defense. They tend to be of one mind about things like that. It's other things like corruption that tends to be more of an issue.
No, it is problematic in Korea. You're right, because they've been on the news not for like huge things in a sense. I mean, the trouble with China, the problems with the CCP and stuff like that, and the trouble with North Korea, but it just seems to be more scandal.
It's very much like Hyundai and Samsung, and it's Korean companies. You see, the whole popular culture is run by the corporations, it seems. It's very much like that. The one thing about Korea is it's the Bible Belt of Asia. It's got a high percentage of evangelicals these professing evangelicals. Now, some of these churches are good, some are not so good, but they're all over the place. Huge steeples and huge choirs. And even the Presbyterians, Korea probably has more Presbyterians than any other country.
Wow.
Yet even the Presbyterians seem to be Pentecostal. It's a strange situation.
Very good. Well, you're in a safe place there. And I just pray that the nation, I know they have some problems with population growth, and birth rate is really down. So there's really
They
some
do.
problems.
It is very serious. It is very serious.
But a lot of believers, as far as you remember, you telling me there was more believers there probably than obviously some of that area. Probably China has more believers there, obviously, for a population.
China would have more, but
yeah,
it's a Bible Belt. Put it to you that way.
Absolutely.
Like 30% of the population left Buddhism over the last 50 years.
Wow. That's incredible. That is incredible. Jacob, let's catch up about what's going on in Gaza and the war there with Hamas. It continues on, but obviously the big issue is humanitarian aid. And I just will cut it right off the bat. The propaganda against Israel and the Jews, that they're killing kids, that they're killing people, there's genocide, they're starving them. All that has been proven false. But now you got another scandal that now the IDF is killing people there for getting food after they open up 3 centers for food. So explain to me what's going on there.
What has been happening consistently is Hamas, declaring itself to be the government of Gaza, is seizing the food. It's selling it. It's using it for its own purposes. The Israelis wanted the food to go directly to the people. Now, I myself was against any aid, any food aid going into Gaza until the hostages are released. So I would have created a situation where not only is Hamas holding Israeli hostages, they're holding their own people hostages. Don't allow in any food or medical or other aid until the hostages are released. I would have taken that line personally. But Israel, as usual, is being accused of false things. This war could be over in 2 days. Israel could have ended this war within the first 2 weeks of October 7th if it didn't care about civilian casualties and if there weren't hostages being held. The misrepresentations I've heard on the BBC, particularly that I heard today, are absolutely outrageous. They were questioning Badnoch, whatever. The presuppositional lies and false reports. Yet when Hamas shot people, Hamas was shooting their own people. They didn't say a word. They did not say a single word.
Yeah.
When the Israelis don't shoot people, they get falsely accused of it. And the BBC is more than happy to carry the story.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to go to you real quick, Andy. Andy, your thoughts on this? You're there on the ground floor. You hear more about it probably than us, but there's such an avalanche of propaganda against Israel and what's going on there that over here in the West, whether it's BBC, Sky News, CNN, New York Times, Financial Times, is basically Israel's just shooting everybody, killing everybody, and but at the same time, they're giving them food. So it doesn't really make any sense if you have a logical argument.
It doesn't make any sense. It doesn't have to make any sense because it's propaganda. It's stuff. It's disinformation that's put out just, for those people who want to hear bad things about Israel. I mean, the people with discernment, the ones who are fair-minded, we'll check these things out. But there are some people who want to salve their conscience and give some rationale for their Jew hatred. And these are the people that will swallow the BBC propaganda.
It doesn't make any sense because
that's really what it is.
Israel transferred 700 million shekels for Gaza aid. I mean, it says that they just transferring more money to help people. And obviously the food supply there, it's watched over by the Americans, watched over by the Israeli, the IDF is there. And so they are doing what they said they would do, that they would allow food to come in. They would transfer money in to get Gaza some help, some food, because they were being starved by Hamas. Hamas was charging outrageous prices at the market, stolen goods that they had from the UN. So it doesn't make any sense that they would do this. But again, the propaganda continues and the lies are being promoted. And you could see it here. Pierre, I'm going to go over to you real quick, because here in the West, you have people that support Israel, but those people now are being shouted down. They are being harassed. They are being brought onto podcasts and interviews, and they're not they used to not give them a platform. They're bringing on these people like Douglas Murray and Natasha Fallon and stuff like that, and they're brought in to be yelled at, to be ridiculed, to be castigated, and hopefully they hold the line. But many of them are already taking the step back and saying, well, maybe Israel is going too far, and then maybe they're being too hard. Are we seeing that in Australia, New Zealand, this sort of kowtowing to, even if those who promote and help the Jewish people and are supportive of the Jewish people are kowtowing them and saying, well, maybe this goes too far?
Yeah, definitely, Marco. I mean, I think what we're finding as well is that there are Christians who are starting to take that standpoint as well.
Oh man.
They sort of start bowing to the world, the pressure of the world, and because it's been spouted from every angle, instead of standing up for what's truth, people go with the flow, and you definitely start seeing that. So I'm not surprised that we see on talk shows people who have been standing up fighting for the side of Israel now starting to relent and go, okay, well, you've got a point, and even we can see that they're not doing things the right way. And when it gets to the point that even Christians are doing this, are you surprised that the non-believers that have been standing up for Israel are now starting to bend as well? And I think it comes down to just pure hatred against the Jews, and I think that hatred is now spilling over to large degrees, where you actually seen some of the things that we're going to be talking about next happening all over the world. And we see it, you try and stand up in a public space and say something pro-Israel, and people want to start getting violent with you and physical. It's no longer just debate.
Right.
Yeah.
You're 100% right. It is no longer just let's discuss this and see who has the better argument or the logical points. Now it's harassment, it's threats. Jacob, no other conflict gets this much news. There's no other conflict. There's no mention of Christians in Africa being harassed and attacked, raped, and destroyed.
No, Muslims can murder all the Christians they want in the
Yeah.
Congo. Nobody cared. When they slaughtered the Christians in East Timor, nobody cared. They can do anything they want to Christians. But if somebody stands up to them and defends themselves from Islam, like Israel does, they get condemned. This is an Obadiah verse 15 situation. This radical Islam and the terror taking place in Western Europe and in these countries. And you've had it in Australia with the Cronulla riots and so forth. They're going to reap what they sowed. They're going to reap what they sowed. They're going to face the same kind of hatred and violence at the hands of fundamentalist Islam as Israel did. God cannot lie. Obadiah, verse 15, that's what's going to happen to them.
Yeah. Andy, I'm going to go over to you.
All of this.
Paris.
Yeah.
It's happening this week in Paris with Macron.
Yeah. Big time.
All of this, very quickly, all of this anti-Semitic hatred and this, it's being stoked through the media and everything in the West. It's going to, sooner or later, it's going to result in some awful atrocity against the Jewish population in Europe somewhere. Another, some kind of huge bombing or a riot, a pogrom or something like that, because it's getting worse and worse, and the governments are really doing, and the media are doing nothing to damp it down. They're just making it even worse.
Andy, real quick, the attacks on Hezbollah this week, the IDF that took it back to Hezbollah because there's been some uprising there, and there's some maybe trying to quelch it down before it gets too tough there. You see, Iran continues to support Hezbollah. Obviously, the war is still going on. If even after all of this, the propaganda, the lies, the political ideologies that the West has, identity politics, cancel culture. You name it, they do it to the Jews. They have to keep fighting because it's a war that it's an existential war. They have no other choice.
Yes, it is. It is.
Yeah.
Yes.
You live a little bit closer to the north than I do. Have you seen anything, heard anything about what's going on up there?
Sorry. Not a lot, actually. There's been, it's very quiet now here in where we live, just on the coast and in the north. So I've not heard anything personally.
All right.
Um,
Jacob, I'm going to go to Jacob real quick. Jacob, the Iran situation, reportedly they're rebuilding and they are preparing their defenses. I guess, the time to strike, if you're going to strike, was probably a few months
Yeah.
ago. They were worst off, but right now they're preparing the air defenses. They are continuing rejecting any nuclear proposals from the United States, from Israel. Five
Yeah.
rounds of talks, nothing's going on. What do you think the next step is going to be? Is Israel just going to take it into their own hands with the help of the U.S.?
If Mr. Trump was simply going through the motions, putting on a public show saying, we wanted peace, we made an offer, and Khomeini rejected it. If he wanted to do that simply as for public relations reasons, I can understand it. If he was actually trying to negotiate with the Iranians, I think it's very foolish. You cannot negotiate with
Yeah.
Iran. No, not with Khomeini, not with Khomeini. Again, I just come back to Daniel chapter 10. The eventual conflict is inevitable.
I'm going to go to Pierre. Pierre, real quick, within New Zealand, and then of course, Davey, you can comment on Australia. Where do they stand on the Iran situation? 'Cause they usually side with, as a Commonwealth country, with the UK, but is that the case still?
Yes, definitely. You find that pretty much anything that has Israel in it, they'll go with the opposite. I think I've mentioned once before that our Prime Minister has said that if Benjamin Netanyahu had to step off a plane in New Zealand, he would have him arrested. So there's no love from our leadership in terms of Israel. They'll side with whoever is anti-Israel. It's quite fascinating because if you look at some of the Middle Eastern countries, they all know that without Israel, they would have been destroyed a long time ago. It's quite a sad state, I think, down here. There's not, the support that we would expect to see anymore. And in fact, our Prime Minister in New Zealand has been making comments about supporting Keir Starmer in terms of if there's a war, he'll send people
No way.
and help. Yeah.
Oh.
So, you can see who they side with straight away.
Incidentally, I just read this afternoon that it is now believed that the Iranians do now have a nuclear bomb
Really?
ready. Yeah.
Oh,
So,
that's interesting. I wonder that we're getting parts from China sort of shipped in so that they could have so many hundred missiles ready to go. But wow.
They've got the technology from Russia and China, and they got the money from Joe Biden and Barack Obama.
So that compresses the time window.
That's exactly right.
And makes it more urgent that the Iranian regime is dealt with sooner rather than later now.
Yeah, I was just going to tell you is that a sooner rather than later, Andy?
Oh yeah.
Oh man.
There has been a redeployment of certain American assets away from NATO to the Middle East over the last week to 10 days, and it's interesting. It's interesting that that's happening.
Jacob, in the middle of all this, it's not only the international problems, the problems with war in Israel, but there's also internal problems. I don't know how deep this is going to go with Netanyahu compromising on the draft bill for the ultra-Orthodox, but they're threatening to dissolve the Knesset. Your thoughts on that?
Well, again, it's the curse of proportional representation, an undemocratic form of democracy. It's plagued Germany. It's certainly plagued any country that's had it, but above all, it plagues Israel. You can't make a majority in the Knesset without making deals with all these small parties. So these small religious parties negotiate their relatively few seats for a few votes that you need to hold the government together. It's just political blackmail. It's what the liberal Democrats wanted Britain to work on, political horse trading and consensus by politicians instead of an electoral mandate from the people. Again, it's a very undemocratic form of democracy that Israel has and has refused to get rid of. And they're reaping the consequences of this bad system. secular Israelis who have to go to the army and see their sons go to the army and have to interrupt their studies from university with reserve duty, Miluim duty, and things like this, they really resent the ultra-Orthodox demanding to be paid and subsidized by the taxpayers to sit in a yeshiva, a religious school, and study Torah all day and not have to go to the army. They're seen as cowards. They're seen as hypocrites. They're seen as parasites. Now, there are some religious people who do serve in the military. There's a religious branch of the military called Hesder Yeshiva. I'm not saying that all of the Orthodox are like that. They're not. Some are not. But the Hasidic sects tend to be like that. They think other Jews should pay them for being Jews.
Yes.
That's what they think.
The country also, yeah, sorry, Jacob, you can. The country also is shifting to the demographic in the country is slowly changing. It's shifting more, particularly, I mean, October the 7th has shunted everything more towards the right, but also demographically, I'm not talking just about the ultra-Orthodox, but the religious are outbreeding the seculars. Yes. They say in about another 20 years' time, the country will be majority religious, not necessarily crazy religious, but religious and more observant. And that will change the political landscape.
Right, right, absolutely.
An astronomically high abortion rate among secular Israelis, where the Orthodox don't abort because they think one of the babies will be the Messiah.
Yeah, absolutely. This is Housing Minister Yitzhak Goldknopf, who is basically head of the UTJ, the Torah, Judaism, and ultra-Orthodox, and as well as other parties. They're threatening. And now, this is the worst time to do it. It's never a good time to do it, but in the middle of a war, what would it mean, Jake, if they dissolve Knesset? What would that mean if there's no coalition?
You're asking me?
Yeah, Jacob, yeah.
What would happen when you don't have a majority government is the president, usually the president of the country, who was not a political office, but he is chief of state, forms a kind of arrangement where the existing prime minister remains as an interim prime minister until a majority can be formed or until there's another election called. That is basically the way it works. It doesn't work very well, but that's the way it works. That is correct. I will always recall 1973. I'm old enough to remember the Yom Kippur War, when the Nixon administration ordered Americans to leave Israel. And the huge lines at Ben Gurion Airport of ultra-Orthodox Jews getting on airplanes, going to New York, going to Brooklyn, fleeing the country. These parasites in yeshivas, being paid to go to yeshivas, lined up fleeing the country and condemning people who don't agree with them. Almost every Jewish believer, if unless they have a health issue, every Jewish believer will serve in the military, and a very high percentage of the Messianic Jewish believers in Israel are what's known as Kravi. They volunteer to serve in combat brigades, combat units. Yet they are hated and condemned, while these parasites and cowards consider themselves to be the righteous sons of Torah.
Yeah. So the coalition's in trouble, but even if there was the dissolving of the Knesset, kind of government that would continue on during.
You'd have what you have in Holland, that kind of thing, a non-government that functions.
Gotcha. I want to talk about Europe real quick, Jacob. I'm going to stay with you. Macron says he's going to take tougher steps against Israel. Obviously, the Gaza humanitarian crisis, he calls it. He wants to establish a Palestinian state, but he's got his whole country is on fire. The biggest city in the country is on fire. The French dock workers don't want to load or unload anything to do with Israel. They really are putting, in a sense, their own kind of embargo against Israel, even though they like their weapons are coming from Israel. But anyway, that's a different story. But Macron, maybe he's mad at Israel because this year Israel is a lot safer than Paris. It seems to be that way. Even though Israel has a war, Paris has his own war. Talk to me about the soccer game, Jacob, that turned into a major riot.
You had Islamic activists protesting and then engaging in riots. What does a sports victory celebration have to do with that? Any excuse to have a riot. He's condemning Israel for standing up to radical Islam. Well, now radical Islam is going to wreak havoc in his own capital, Paris, and not for the first time. Again, Obadiah, verse 15. He's reaping what he sowed. Also,
I love the way the BBC put it.
Yeah. Remember that Germany and France are both countries that have made coalition governments with the extreme left in order to stop conservatives, in order to not make a coalition with the conservatives. It was the ADL, AFD in Deutschland, Germany, and Le Pen's party in France. Just to keep them out. They make coalitions with the left and with Islamic parties just to keep real conservatives or French or German patriots out. They call the patriots fascists or Nazis, when the real Nazis are the Islamofascists, the Islamo-Nazis. This is the same as what Starmer did in Britain, the Labour Party in Britain, placating the Islamic parties, left-wing politicians of Britain, placating the Islamic parties to keep political power. And they are going to pay for what they did.
I'm going to go to Andy. Andy, real quick, the way the BBC put it, these were soccer fans who were just celebrating, mostly peaceful celebration. And CNN follows suit with that. But these were North African Muslim gangs going through Paris, burning it. The screams of French women, being attacked, being harassed, probably raped, as many times that happens in Paris. Shops looted, fires lit, foreign gangs. It was a total destruction of Paris, probably since maybe the 2012 riots that they had. We haven't seen anything that big. It's being burnt to the ground. This is what Islam does in more one sense in Israel, but this is now in Europe.
Yeah. What is really disturbing, we can see it. You realize that how bad these things are when you see them. All this footage, you can see it on X, but it doesn't appear very often. There's the serious stuff on the mainstream media. I was watching a little video put out by a guy in Bournemouth in the UK. You think Bournemouth is a posh place, yes? A quiet little town. And this chap was saying that they have in Bournemouth, they have running battles in the street with people with machetes, rival gangs. People running through gardens, waving machetes, all of this stuff. The police do practically nothing, and not a shred of it appears in the local newspaper. You don't see it on the mainstream news. These are riots with people waving machetes around. Not a whisper of it. It's being hidden from people how serious the problem is, and.
We had a situation in Southport, England, where a woman said some extreme things in reaction to the little girls being knifed to death by an African son of...
That's Lucy Connolly, isn't it, I think?
Yeah. Lucy Connolly. She's locked up in jail while Islamic sex gang traffickers of underage girls get out of jail free card. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, exactly.
Rapists, violent criminals are let out of prison free or given non-custodial sentences, but she is locked up because of a reaction to saying what she said about these immigrants. Now, this guy who knifed the little girls, they claim to say it had nothing to do with Islam. The police found an Al Qaeda guidebook, training manual in his house, as well as ricin, the poison.
Yeah.
You know, and yet this woman is in jail, but the people who are in the gangs in Rotherham, the Muslim, they're basically pimping off underage English girls with the knowledge of the police and the politicians, and were protected. They don't go to jail. But if you speak against it, they lock you up. That is Stormers Britain.
Yeah, and it's becoming Europe.
Worse. It's becoming worse, yeah.
Yeah, Pierre and Davey, you don't see it quite the way it's being done in Europe, but it's quietly ramping up, isn't it, there in Australia and New Zealand? Maybe not to the degree that it's in Europe, and we're going to talk about the US in a moment, but you see it ramping up. I was there in Australia, New Zealand with you guys. I saw it in Australia, not so much in New Zealand at the time, but obviously that's been a few years. Over to you, Pierre.
Yeah, Davey and I were actually talking about this yesterday. We were driving through Sydney, and we were just talking about the number of mosques that have been sort of sprouting up all over the place. And it is a little bit different in New Zealand with the new government that came in when Labour were voted out. We've seen a bit of a downturn in terms of Muslim immigrants coming in. We have a large percentage of Indian Sikhs coming into New Zealand. And, it's a totally different situation to having a whole host of Muslim immigrants coming in. The result of that is on, where I live, which is just outside of Hamilton, so in Hamilton City, on the Hamilton east side, there's a fairly large mosque. And then if you go up towards Auckland and you get to South Auckland, there's a number of mosques, and there's areas there that are predominantly Muslim. But it's nowhere near like the situation that Davey and them have here in Australia, where there's a lot of that violence as well that you see in Europe. I don't know if you want to comment on that, David.
Well, yeah, the violence that's happening in Victoria at the moment has been spiraling out of control, not to the degree we're seeing in France, but to the point where only a week or so ago, Jacinda Ardern, the state government there, outlawed machetes. So machetes are now outlawed in Victoria. However, now they're attacking one another with meat cleavers. So it's kind of like, wonderful, that's great. Works really well, doesn't it? But none of them will address the ideology behind it. So it's kind of like they can outlaw the guns, they can take away our guns, which they've done. They can take away the machetes. Now they're onto meat cleavers. Look, they'll come up with something else because they'll never address the ideology. Now, if I was a member of a soccer team or a soccer fan over, in France or that kind of thing, I'd be a little bit incensed, and I think I'd be going in for slander, for defamation, because again, they won't address the real problem.
No, they won't. And Europe keeps discussing the idea of boycotting Israel, while at the same time trying to get weapons into Europe from Israel, by the way, which is interesting because they have a war coming up. Hopefully not. But Jacob, I want to talk to you about Geert Wilders in the Netherlands. Obviously, he left the coalition. Yes. Yeah, it's collapsed. And but he said something interesting in a recent speech just this week. Israel's fighting our battles. Look, we have to stand with the Jewish people because they're fighting our battles. If Jerusalem falls, it'll be Greece, it will be Athens, it will be Paris, it will be it'll be London next, it will be Netherlands next. How right is he? He's been talking about this for a long time.
Absolutely right. He's been saying the same kind of thing for some years, but he's been unjustly condemned and being called a racist and a bigot. He's simply telling the truth. The Muslims murdered Theo van Gogh in Holland. They murdered other people. He's simply saying what is factually undeniable. But the liberal left is the problem. You've got the problem in Germany. You've got the problem in France. Maloney is better. In Italy. Eastern Europe is better. Hungary, Poland, they are better concerning the Islamic threat. Nigel Farage is better concerning the Islamic threat in Britain, and he has made tremendous political gains in the recent by-elections. There is a prospect of him becoming the Donald Trump of Great Britain. But Geert Wilders is guilty of a crime for which he cannot be forgiven by the left. He's told the truth.
He told the truth. Andy, I'm going to go over to you. He's been to Israel many times, over 40 times, and obviously Jacob was talking about his wife being Jewish. He's gone to the Judea and Samaria. He's gone to different parts of Israel, and he even talked about the fact that Palestine is Jordan. Make no mistake about it. He said Palestine is Jordan. This is the land of the Jews. This is Israeli land, biblical land. I don't know where he stands biblically, but Jordan is Palestine, which of course he was hated, threatened. He's still talking about it. I guess he lived in Moshav Tomer, which is in the Jordan Valley. So your thoughts on that? This is quite different than most European leaders. Andy?
Oh, you're talking to me. Sorry, I thought you were talking to Jacob.
Absolutely, yeah.
Sorry.
That's all right.
Sorry. Oh, oh, right, yeah. Oh, yeah. Can you repeat that again, Marcus? Sorry, I lost track of it because I thought you were addressing Jacob, and I wasn't completely.
No. You know, if it's a wife is a little glitchy, I don't know if it's true, but yeah, I was addressing you that regarding the Prime Minister of the Netherlands, Geert.
Geert Wilders, you mean?
Yeah, he lived in Israel for he lived in Israel for a time. He's been there for more than 40 times, he says. He's lived in the what they call the West Bank, but it was Judea and Samaria. He's lived in the Moshav Tomer. He loves the Jewish people, loves Israel, and he's made very provocative comments. I mean, provocative in the sense of left-wing ideology, provocative kind of thing. Israel is the land of the Jews, it's the land of biblical land, and Jordan is Palestine, which of course brought great amount of ire from the Muslim community in the Netherlands and Amsterdam as well as Hamas, as well as Hezbollah. You know, how do you guys see that? I mean, he is so refreshing to hear somebody that, at least as Jacob said, speaks the truth. Yeah, go ahead.
He's actually an honest politician, which is a very rare thing. And it's very refreshing to see him. His support for Israel is very, very. He's very frank about things. You remember some years ago, also he did that video. He got really condemned for it. He was talking about the demographics in Europe.
Oh yeah,
and
that's right.
I can't remember the name of the video now. It's an excellent little movie. And he was really showing how time was running out to reverse the process of Islamicization of Western Europe. The situation is extremely serious. I think only a few days ago on, I think it was on GB News, one politician, and he wasn't even a left-winger, was saying that by 2060, Britain, for example, could be majority Muslim. That is extremely disturbing. And the white British people will be they're simply being outbred. Also because of all the imports that people like Keir Starmer have been bringing in on an almost daily basis as well.
Yeah,
I shudder for Britain, really.
I remember that video that you talked about now because I think it was almost 10 years ago. He shared it, and things have changed. Things have changed.
I think it was
10 years.
Yeah, I think they even threatened to put him in prison for that. I think at one point.
Yes,
you know, he quit the coalition because his party and other parties as well would not address the issue of immigration. That's why he left the coalition. It was the immigration issue. So he's still on the same topic, the right topic, than to address the issue of why the Netherlands is the way it is. And in fact, he says, if we want our mothers to sleep well tonight, you know, help the Jewish mothers sleep well tonight.
Yes.
And help those who are fighting the terror of Iran, Hezbollah, Hamas, Islamic Jihad. I mean, he went down the list. I'm like, man, why isn't this guy staying in, you know, the coalition? But I guess, you know, things get so bad, you just cannot continue.
even on the basis of just demographics alone, without all the extra imports that people that are flooding into Europe, it's very depressing to say it, but I think civil war breaking out in the UK, in parts of France, and other parts in Germany is almost inevitable. It's not a question of if, but when, and also who starts it, whether the Muslims start it first and start to purge out, the native population, and subjugate them, or the populations wake up and start to expel Muslims. Whichever way, one way or another, it's going to happen. I think it's unavoidable because Islam is a parasitic, genocidal, totalitarian, evil ideology that has no compunction about rape, slaughter, massacring people that gets in its way. It's going to happen one way or another, and it horrifies me. But I can't see it being avoided. You can't invite something like that into your country and expect not to be conflict.
Correct.
It's on a collision course, no doubt. Jacob,
Yes.
I'm going to go over to you. D-Day, 81 years ago today, June 6, 1944.
Yes.
We're in the midst of, probably at the verge of maybe another war. The biggest war in Europe has been going on the last few years, and with Ukraine and Russia, and yet 81 years ago, D-Day, the end of the war. Your thoughts on the end of World War II, and of course now on the precipice of another war. Ukraine and Russia have been attacking each other quite heavily this week, and we'll talk a little bit about what Kiev did. But go ahead on D-Day.
I've been to the Normandy beaches, and it's an incredible place to visit. Omaha Beach and Utah Beach and Gold Beach, where the British landed, and so forth. These are incredible places to visit, and the cemeteries are very moving, of the people who defeated Hitler. But let's remember what's come out of the aftermath of the Second World War is something we're still living with. For instance, Stalin and Hitler made a pact to divide Europe. They made a pact. Now, Hitler broke the pact with Operation Barbarossa and invaded Russia, but they made a pact. At the end of the war, Harry Truman and Stalin made a pact, Yalta and Potsdam, to divide Europe. That's what they did. Harry Truman sold America and the West out, people, Romania, Hungary, Poland, they were sold down the river by Harry Truman, by the United States government. If Truman built the Iron Curtain, Harry Truman gave him the iron. This is and Roosevelt before him, but especially Truman. There were people. I didn't like General Patton as a person, but as a general, he knew what he was talking about. He wanted to stop Stalin when they could have. Churchill wanted to stop Stalin when they could have. The Americans had atomic weapons. Nobody else did. They could have just told Stalin to go back, but there was just a general betrayal. Well, what Putin is doing now, Putin is a child of the Soviet Union. He's a product of the Cold War. He's still fighting the Cold War in his mind. That's what underlies his aggression against the Ukraine. Now, we know the Ukraine is a corrupt government involved with Biden and all this corruption. I'm not singing the praises of the Ukrainian government, but I have nothing against the Ukrainian people whatsoever. And I have nothing against the Russian people. But Putin is basically a Cold Warrior on the left side. That's basically what he is. So the repercussions we have now are because of what happened at the end of the Second World War. I'm right here, walking distance of the Incheon beaches, where MacArthur landed and tried to push the communists back to China, and he was fired by Truman, of course. Truman's refusal to stand up to China when America had the nuclear capacity nobody else did, the betrayal of Asia and of China to the communists by Truman. Well, right now, Seoul is in artillery distance of North Korea. North Korea is doing what it's doing. It is a nuclear state. It has nuclear weapons. It is a terrorist state. It has an abysmal human rights record. They could wipe out Seoul with a first strike attack.
Yeah.
Thank Harry Truman. You know, the mistakes that the United States government made in the aftermath of the Second World War are unforgivable. It was a betrayal of America and of America's allies. It was a betrayal. And we are living with the fruits and consequences of that betrayal.
Yeah. Today, Kiev is on fire. Russia's been attacked. There's no peace in sight. I'm going to stay with Jacob real quick. Jacob, Trump was outraged at this attack upon Russia strategically on the plains. Although he said it was a incredible, outstanding plan, but he was upset that nobody checked in with them, I guess. And Russia has suffered tremendous. I guess their bombers are 41 planes have been destroyed, disabled. 34% of the fleet has been disabled. These were an incredible attack.
Oh, and they can't replace it. And it's billions of dollars worth of damage that they can't replace.
No.
They don't even have the manufacturing or technological capacity to replace those planes. It is, first of all, unthinkable that the Ukraine performed that operation without the backing of Western intelligence secretly. It so much resembles what the Israelis did in Lebanon, the pre-positioning of the
18
ordnance.
months. 18 months.
Yeah. You know, this had to be, I would say, had to be done with the knowledge of West and cooperation of Western intelligence. It had to be as a signal to Putin to stop this. What's interesting is Putin has retaliated yesterday and today.
Yeah.
How? By attacking civilians and killing civilians.
Yeah.
Notice the Ukrainians attack military targets. Putin attacks civilian targets. His strategy is to try to demoralize the Ukrainian people and squash their spirit and determination to survive domination by Russia. That is what's happened. But he's lost 1 million people. He's not gained a terrestrial victory. And he's talking about using some very, very dangerous weapons. Missiles, because that's all he can do. He's talking about Oreshnikov missiles, which are very, very dangerous. They're intermediate range ballistic missiles. But having said that, even yesterday, the guidance system for Russian missiles was on a decommissioned oil platform in the Black Sea. The Ukrainians, they took it out. They also took out 3 launches for the I think it's called Ice-Cananders missiles.
Oh yeah, Ice-Cananders, yes.
Yeah, they took out 3 of those yesterday. So they're eroding Putin's capacity to even use missile technology to attack Ukrainian civilians. Putin is in a desperate situation. He's made a big mistake. He is in a situation where he could have kept Ukraine out of NATO. Nobody wanted Ukraine in NATO. It was too corrupt. Now countries are accepting Ukraine as a potential NATO member. Additionally, he's created another 800 miles of border with a NATO country when Finland joined NATO in response to his invasion of Ukraine. Everything he's done has blown up in his face. He's a desperate person, but my fear has always been desperate people will do desperate things. There's also something of a conflict in Russia between the military and the intelligence, the FSB, whatever it is, the successors of the KGB.
Yeah.
There's a political conflict between the two. Putin is up a tree. All he can do is what he's doing, kill civilians. He can't win on the ground. He can't win on, that's not going to happen. He's lost 1 million casualties, 1 million. He's losing 1,000. He's losing over 1,000 casualties a day to take small strips of territory that he may not be able to hold anyway. Right. It's absolutely absurd. On top of all the sanctions.
Yeah, and more coming.
Mr. Trump needs to say, look, you had a chance to keep Ukraine out of NATO. Now they're going to come into NATO. You had a chance to have all these assets unfrozen to revitalize the Russian economy. Now those assets, capital assets, are going to be used to buy weapons by the Ukrainians from the United States and other Western countries to kill Russians. Is that what you want? You want that money being used to buy weapons to kill Russians or to revitalize the Russian economy? Is that what you want? Do you want Ukraine outside of NATO or do you want it inside of NATO? You have the choice, and you made the wrong choice. He's got to come out harder against Putin after this. He's got to.
Yeah, I'm going to go to Pierre. Pierre, real quick. Despite 2 rounds of peace talks, nothing's happened. Ukraine, Russia. Obviously, Trump has threatened Russia with more sanctions. Putin doesn't want to come to the table, especially now after this Operation Spiderweb. And we watched a little video of that, as Jacob described. It was quite phenomenal. 18 months, you got these drones and containers and lids, and at some point, the lids open up. All remote control AI. Drones come out, they blast all these bombers and Russian equipment. It was quite an amazing thing to see. I mean, it was only done through AI technology and surely with the help of other countries, I would suspect. But knowing all this, do you suspect that this is going to continue to increase? Now we're going to get into the biggest war in Europe since World War II, or do you perceive some kind of peace coming at the last minute?
Yeah, it's an interesting one. I look at it and they basically poking the bear, aren't they? Because essentially, as Jacob has said, Putin is now in a desperate situation. So his response is going to be desperate. And when we look at the European leaders, they are not discussing things with Trump. They tend to have their own view and outlook. Starmer, for one, is all out. We need to go to war. Macron, same thing. You're hearing this talk of war. It's almost like these European leaders are wanting a war, and they've got a common enemy at the moment in terms of Russia, and the fact that they keep assisting the Ukraine. Putin's going to look at this and go, well, he's not going to back down, because then he's backing down to the rest of Europe, and he's got his pride, as Jacob has mentioned. He comes from the Cold War. They've always been a force to be reckoned with, and if they are not willing to bring Trump into this to try and negotiate a peace, I think it's going to escalate into a situation of war, because there's a real desire from these European leaders to go to war. It's all you hear from them. Starmer, since he's come in, it's just been about war, going to war. And I think maybe they think it's a distraction to what's going on in their own countries. And people aren't then focusing on what's happening in their countries. But I can't see this one ending peacefully, not with Putin. His pride he would put before anything, and his pride of Russia. He's a very proud Russian, and I can't see him stepping back from this one.
Yeah, no, I'm going to venture to say that you're absolutely right, Andy. To you, Andy, you're right. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Yes, sorry,
Okay,
I was just.
very good. No worries. It's Operation Spiderweb, similar to Grim Beeper operation.
Oh yeah, the Grim Reaper thing. Yeah,
yeah, it was quite amazing.
Yes.
And this is 18 months, but obviously, perhaps even what Jacob was saying, the Israelis had something to, something of an insight here, CIA, MI6, whatever. But Israel is very much aligned with Ukraine in a sense of supporting them, and obviously Zelensky being a Jew and things like that. And but they also see the threat of Russia upon Israel, and even Russia getting help from China. Today we hear that China is sending 800 missile materials to attack Israel, to Iran, to attack Israel. So this is it's not just a European thing. It is going to flood, and it's going to spill over because of the enemies of Israel.
Yes. Yeah. Yes. There's another reason to sort the Iranian issue out before they get more reinforcements. Really, our time window is shrinking.
People are concerned there, Andy. I mean, is the average Israeli concerned about this, or they're just going about their lives without really thinking about this?
It's hard to. That's actually quite hard to. At least the people that I meet in town, maybe they're not thinking about this too much at the moment. But I mean, you just get on with life, don't you? But I'm sure that for those who are really thinking about the direction the country's taking, that there is a deep concern about it. Basically, it's a regional war that could become very hot.
Yes.
It's already burning, but it could really heat up. I mean, Iran has to be dealt with. There's no way around it. The Iranian regime has to be toppled because they fund all the Islamic militias, the Houthis, everything. They've got to be sorted out. We can't, and I think prophetically as well. I mean, I've speculated on this. I think Israel has to be more ascendant in this region before the temple could be rebuilt. I think it has to become much more of a regional superpower, so that this thing will happen without worrying too much what the Muslim response would be to moves towards rebuilding the temple. I really do think that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Jake, I'm going to go to you. We talked about the Trump issues with peace talks and not only Russia, Ukraine, Iran, Israel, but there's always problems, seems to be here, problems in the White House. This particular one, it's got the internet going because people are just kind of want to get their popcorn ready and watch this feud online. It's Trump and Musk and their fight. Is it nothing to see here? Political theater, orchestrated. There's some reality to this. I'm going to expose you for being on the Epstein list. You always get the money from the government. You had nothing to do with this. NASA, part of the plan was to give some money for the EV, the electrical vehicles, which Trump said no. Is it much to do about nothing here?
The budget itself is much to do about something. I do agree with Mr. Trump not to have appointed the Democrat who Mr. Musk seemed to favor to direct NASA. However, I have to take into account that he's a plutocrat. Mr. Musk is an oligarch. He backed Hillary Clinton in the past. Where are his ideological stands? Is it something that he's doing out of self-interest, or is it something he's doing out of national interest? That is always the question. However, having said that, he's out of order by bringing the Epstein allegations into play, unless he has some documented evidence supporting it. Even Epstein's lawyer said this is out of order.
Yeah.
That's no substance to it. He's just getting personally nasty. So when you have the most powerful man in the world and the most wealthy man in the world at each other's throats after a schism between them, this is indeed news. I said 3 weeks ago here on Catching Up with Jacob that the budget is not big and beautiful, it's big and bad. It does not do anything to put a lid on the growing deficits. The deficits are going to continue to grow. Not only that, it is stuffed with pork and it is stuffed with other kinds of legislation, nothing to do with the budget that's been stuffed into it, including AI. It's a bad deal. As most of you know, although I prayed for Mr. Trump and I would have rather have him than Harris, this last election, I myself was unable to vote for him for certain reasons. He had that homosexual gala at Mar-a-Lago and certain other things I was uncomfortable with, and I was unable to vote for him. But although I'd certainly rather have him than Harris. On the other hand, it's never stopped me to pray for him and pray for him daily. And I would urge Christians particularly to continue to pray for him. He's in a difficult situation. I don't think all of his decisions have been the best. and he takes opposition personally, and it becomes very a matter of personal conflict.
Yeah.
And that's true with Mr. Musk as well. It is not a good thing for the country that these two are at each other's throats. It's not a good thing. Now, my position on the budget does not come primarily from Mr. Musk. I had that position before he voiced it. I think that essentially Rand Paul was telling the truth about it. Senator Rand Paul, who was certainly not a Democrat. But again, the unbelievable hypocrisy of the Democrats who used to love Musk. Then they hated him, despised him, vandalism at Tesla cars, and now they love him again just because he's against Trump. You can't make this up. The hypocrisy knows no bounds. What Jake Tapper, a disgusting excuse for a journalist, was part of the cover-up. He had part of the culture of cover-up in the fake media. And now you have that lesbian former White House press secretary, Karina Jean-Pierre. She's left the Democratic Party to write a book of her own. The same as called Independent, the same as Tapper did. The hypocrisy of the Democratic Party is unbelievable. Unbelievable.
You know what's interesting about Tapper? He wrote this book, and it's called Original Sin, which is kind of an interesting, title for Original Sin for his, I guess his own, maybe his own purging. But being a Jew, Jacob, one of the criticisms about Tapper, he never ever deals with the problem that Israel has in it with Islam. He never deals with the fact that they're being attacked, and he, on the other hand, just like the Cohen guy that you mentioned from Memphis, would take the side of the Islamists. Being a journalist, you would think they're attacking Jewish people, and he will not lift a finger.
Stand is the same, yes. Debbie Wasserman Schultz may as well be the same. What she talks and what she does are two different things. The left-wing Jews are absolutely reprehensible people. They're at complete ideological odds with most Israelis and with the traditional values of Jewish America. However, there are a number of Jews who are now moving away from the Democrats. And there was a complaint just issued by somebody, was it complaining that, it was Carville, that affluent American Jews are not supporting the Democratic Party financially in the way they did.
Well, could you blame them, right? Could you blame them?
Yeah,
this
no
is
surprise
Soros will do it. Soros will do it, but
Alex Soros would do it.
He has no anything.
I'm going to go to Pierre real quick. Pierre, from the outside looking in, I just want to tell you about the big, beautiful bill and just your thoughts on it because of the AI regulation. So it was slipped in. It's in there. It's one of the sections that I hate to say it, some of the congressmen and women did not read it, but it basically prohibits state and local governments from passing any law regulating artificial intelligence for 10 years. This is, again, an attempt to try to bring in AI through the back door. I don't know how big it is in New Zealand, Australia, the promotion of AI here. It's been slow. It's not like other countries that are just speeding up to it, but it's been slow. But now the surveillance is coming in, especially with the deals of Palantir as surveillance for protection, border control, and all that. What are your thoughts and the implication of this? This is a pretty big deal in terms of AI here in America, which is, we've had surveillance. Don't get me wrong. Well, but this is now to an nth degree.
Yeah, as a member of Joe Public, I would be very concerned because this is basically giving government the right to install surveillance that not even lower levels of power can try and sort of go against. It's going to give them a blank page basically to rewrite how they can monitor everybody and collect information, and without knowing to which degree they're going to take this, I think the American public should be extremely concerned. The power of AI, if you just take utilizing it to get information off the net. You can write what is essentially a complex question, and within seconds it can provide you with information that it's drawn from various sources. Now, if you can do that with an individual, you can basically sit in a surveillance capability and draw information on someone so quickly, so easily, because they'll have that infiltrating into banking systems, tax, everything to do with your life. Working in the security industry, I would be very, very concerned, because I've seen it starting to come in built into cameras, and that in a way that cameras operate unlike before. In previous times, you had analytics that were built into cameras that you could tell it up front, this is what you wanted to do. But with AI, it has a much wider capability in terms of what you can use that camera for. So you can actually train the camera to differentiate between different objects that someone may be carrying. So you think about that just from a surveillance, from a CCTV perspective. Then you put that into systems that are monitoring all of our lives, which, let's face it, our lives are electronic. Everything we do is captured somewhere. That kind of capability is scary. And while you may have a Donald Trump in charge today, who are you going to have in charge in 10 years' time? And how are they going to utilize it? So it's extremely frightening. And just as a general member of the public, I would be concerned.
Yeah, no doubt. And is it getting there in New Zealand? Is it getting there? I mean, I don't hear too much about AI and the push of AI there, but you live there and you know more about it than I do.
Yeah, to that level, we haven't really had much coming from government and that.
Okay.
As I say, I've seen it coming through in the CCTV environment. And the fact that we have a lot of change in terms of how the police are utilizing CCTV now, facial recognition. They can then use AI to associate a lot of things with that facial recognition. So there are aspects of it that you can see coming in that will eventually grow into probably more of a surveillance of individuals. I haven't heard anything from our intelligence group, that's been in the media as such, but we align very much with the likes of Canada, Australia, UK. So whatever they're doing, we will do. Because there's this general agreement. So if you see it happening in one, expect it to be in any of the others in a short period of time.
Well, with the Labor government, sneaking these things in different bills, the Labor government's been good at doing that here in Australia, and I'm thinking they're taking a page out of the Labor government's book.
Yeah, this is the concerning part. It was just sort of thrown in there at the end, and people didn't even read it. Now they did, and now they're freaking out about it. Andy, I'm going to go over to you because Israel's pretty good about AI. I mean, in fact, they use it in military. In fact, when Trump went to the Middle East to sign these deals with Qatar, Saudi Arabia, Palantir projects were a big part of it, selling that technology to maybe not so good characters there in the Middle East, but that was part of the deal. AI dictatorship in the Middle East. I mean, these wars are fought on AI now. I mean, Israel uses it. Perhaps
a lot of it, yeah.
Middle East dictators are going to use it now.
And also, I mean, Israel has, you can see it, I mean, massively here in terms of, well, for example, I mean, everything is so interconnected here. I mean, just recently there was, well, in my own personal experience, I think I told you about this. There was a tax payment that something went wrong somewhere. Anyway, within like a very short order, I found that the money had just was expropriated from my bank account just like that. But over here, if you don't pay certain things, they stop your driving license very quickly. They
Wow.
can, they can. Oh, you won't believe how fast they can clamp you down.
Wow.
And now just imagine all that in the wrong hands.
Yeah.
I mean, and Israel's very well developed in terms of moving towards cashless society. We're not there yet, but the pace of things, where in a sense you're being funneled into it because if you go downtown in our town, there used to be like parking meters. They were all taken away in a very short space of time, and now it's all everything's by app. Nearly
Oh.
everything. If you
Oh, I
want to
hate
go
that.
to the post office to pay a bill, you have to make an appointment through the app. If you want to go, this is the same with the health services. You can, the banking. It's all moving that way, and I think it's inevitable that this will spread, and AI making these decisions as well. That less and less people will be involved.
Right.
It chills me to the core. I hate it all,
Hmm.
but
to get into
uh,
Australia or New Zealand, well, it's definitely Australia too. But the facial recognition app, it's AI driven, and you can't even talk to anybody. You just take a picture, and well, it's up to them whether they let you in or not. You have no way of.
yes,
I guess there isn't
we
a
are
process.
moving that way.
Yeah.
But whether I mean that there could be some global catastrophe that could shut a lot of this down.
Yeah.
I mean, really quite, a world war, with involved nuclear capabilities could actually destroy this infrastructure. We don't know for sure.
Right.
Let's remember that, and during COVID, the shopping malls and supermarkets wouldn't allow Israelis to go in and shop unless they had a button saying that they'd been vaccinated.
Yeah.
Some places
not,
that had,
yeah,
there was
You had to
some
go
of
to-
that.
you had to go to a McCall or a neighborhood grocery shop, perhaps. But big malls and things like this, they were looking for that button, or the security wouldn't let you in.
Yes.
In other words, you couldn't buy or sell unless you'd taken this jab in your skin. Now, I'm not saying that's the mark of the beast, but I am saying how that kind of technology is going in that direction.
Yes,
And-
it could be used in that way.
And
We do
Israel
know.
was a guinea pig for it. Israel was the guinea pig market for it.
Yes.
Mm. Yeah, a lot of things changed in those 5 years. A lot of things were tried, a lot of things were done, and certainly now you have this AI tech. You know what concerns me is like you sell all this technology, pretty much high-end Palantir project stuff, and now it's in the hands of Middle East Muslim dictators. But thanks to the Trump administration, I'm not necessarily saying he didn't want to have to do the deal, but he gave him the technology to do it. Obviously, there was a lot of deals going on in there for safety and peace and military and stuff like that. But that's scary stuff. You got AI surveillance at a whole different level now. Jake, I'm going to go to you. Let's talk about the Colorado firebomber. The firebombing attacker went after a Jewish march, Jewish people in Boulder, Colorado. I've been to that mall. It's a beautiful place. It's nice to walk around. They were just having a peaceful march for the release of the hostages. It wasn't even a protest. Some of the news said it was a protest. It was just simply a simple freedom march, peace-loving march. This man, Mohammed Salman, 45 years old, from Egypt, firebombed them, injured 15 of them. He's being charged with 118 counts of attempted murder. This is, again, not in a college campus, not a university campus. It's on the streets of not Los Angeles, on the streets of Colorado, as well as what happened to the two workers at the embassy in Washington, D.C., the Israeli embassy workers, their staff. So this is now on the streets of the United States, open anti-Semitism.
Open, well, it's been across the campuses. Let's remember, this guy had an expired visa. He was allowed into the country by Biden. He never should have been. It's the same old story. You've got these Muslims coming to the Western world, wanting to live in Western countries to escape the stinking crud that the Islamic world is. I mean, they're filthy, they're garbage, they're public.
Yeah.
I haven't been to, unless it's one of the very wealthy oil economies. They're basically, they every one of them smells like a public urinal. That's what they're just a disgusting, filthy civilization, except that they're not civilized. That's the Islamic world. I don't blame people for wanting to leave a cesspit like a Muslim country. I don't blame, and I've been to Muslim countries from the Far East to North Africa and the Middle East. I've been to many of them, and they're all pretty much the same, except for the very wealthy oil ones with small populations and a high per capita income because of the oil. Other than that, they're all the same. I've even seen crud in some of those. Okay, they want to leave that crud, the filth of what the Islamic world is, and come to a civilized country. But they insist on bringing the crud and filth with them. So the very thing they're trying to escape, crud and filth, they're bringing with them to the developed world, into the Judeo-Christian democracies, and then trying to put the same Islamic culture and Sharia and all of this onto Western countries. And you've got politicians, one after another. George Bush was one of the worst. Barack Obama was absolutely terrible. Biden was horrible. Starmer was horrible. And the conservative governments of Britain were no better, hardly any better. Bringing them in, just allowing these people to come in unvetted. We've bought it on ourselves. Look, I will say this directly. I am not against Muslims. I don't hate Muslims, but I don't believe in Islam. But there is something wrong with the Islamic culture. I was in Brunei, where the Sultan lives in a palace of gold. You wouldn't believe the opulence. And I saw people, his own subjects, living on platforms over lagoons with raw sewage flowing right underneath them. The unbelievable poverty in a country that has high oil revenue and where the Sultan can live the way he wants to, as if he was a divine being, and the people kept in subhuman poverty. That is the Islamic world. That is what it's like. You'll find that in Morocco. You will find that in the Middle East. You'll find that in Egypt. You'll find that in any Muslim country I've ever been to, anywhere from Asia all the way to North Africa. It's always the same. It's just a stinking public urinal. That's what they all have, that atmosphere. Yes, I don't blame you for wanting to get out of it, but don't bring it with you to California. Don't bring it with you to Devon. Don't bring it with you to the Sunshine Coast of Australia. But they do, and they do so with the blessings of Western politicians.
Yeah, Davey, I'm going to go to you real quick because we were in Australia and there were some threats to, we were in Melbourne and there were some threats to that Jewish community there. It wasn't quite like this, but you've showed me pictures, you've seen things of attacks against Jews, graffiti against Jews, burning cars against, Jewish, I guess the threat of against Jewish people burning cars and all that stuff. So this attack, although it's a pretty big deal, you've seen some of that in Australia, haven't you?
Yes, yeah. I think they finally got two of the firebombers of the synagogue.
Oh, really?
Firebombed late last year, just before Christmas, Hanukkah. Yeah. I think they finally laid charges against two of them. It's taken their time. Look, the police and the law here have been terribly slack when it comes to crimes against the Jewish people. In fact, a lot of the times the police are very pro-Islamic and very anti-Israel. It's kind of like we have the marches here. They'll arrest the one guy holding a Jewish flag, and while the others are allowed to scream the most vile anti-Semitic threats possible, calling for the death of, innocent lives and that. But yeah, when we flew into Sydney, when I arrived into Sydney, we were greeted by the toilets at the Sydney airport were spray painted with horrible anti-Semitic slurs of vulgar language, which I'm not going to repeat online. But the anti-Semitic here is getting worse and worse and worse, and I'm noticing it even more in the country areas because people are being fed they're being brainwashed with a diet by the mainstream media, which is absolutely horrendous. We've got Penny Wong, we've got Anthony Albanese, and both of them are anti-Semitic to the core. They're vile, disgusting excuses for world leaders. I can't even believe I just said that called them world leaders. They're trash. But look, I think these things are going to keep happening. And when you've got people like Jacinda Allen, okay, let's ban the machete. They won't address the real problem, because if they do that, it's Islamophobia, and Islamophobia is a real problem. They won't address the real issue. So people are going to resort to things, like the homemade flamethrowers, and it's going to
Molotov cocktails. Yeah.
We're going to have a really bad incident here. We're building to it. We're building to it all the time.
You don't see a lot of that in New Zealand, Pierre. I don't hear too much about it. I don't read too much about attacks like this, like in Australia or the UK or now the US.
Yeah, no, not to that extent. What I have seen over in New Zealand is, someone standing in support of Israel with an Israeli flag, and then being surrounded by a group carrying Palestinian flags and chanting, and then the members of that group running in and actually ripping the Israeli flag out of the one person who's standing alone, out of their hands, and then running off with it, and the others sort of blocking that person from being able to go after the one who's stolen the flag. Police standing there, they'll do nothing. They won't help. They won't intervene. And the concern I have is when we see this sort of thing happening in places like the US, it emboldens these Palestinian supporters in other countries. So like Davey said, something big will happen here, and I wouldn't put it past something big happening in a place like New Zealand, because they don't expect it. It's like the least expected thing in New Zealand. And so, it probably becomes a good place for something like that to happen.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And Andy, I'm going to go to you. What is the response there? I mean, when you see this over there, I mean, it is quite shocking that in America, you never would have thought that it would happen. I mean, you have fringe groups, but the fringe groups are fringe groups. But now it's campuses, streets. The two Israelis that were shot in Washington, D.C. by Elias Rodriguez. One of them, at least one of them, was suspected to be a believer. I think Yaron was his name. But you see that, and you go.
I think they both were, actually.
Oh, Sarah too. Right?
As far as I know.
Yeah.
As far as I know, they both were.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. So, what do you think? I mean, what was the response there? Obviously, the Israelis. I think she was born in America. Her parents were American citizens as well. But that was pretty shocking to me. It just signals something here in America that I had not seen before: cold-blooded murder, open murder, and yet very little was talked about. Besides maybe Christian channels and pastors that were talking about it, very little was said.
Yeah, I think people are. I mean, at least from some of the Twitter accounts or X accounts that I follow, that are by Israelis, but they're not believers.
Right.
They're pretty angry about it, I can tell. I mean, but I don't think they really. Well, if you're outside of the Lord, it's hard to understand how people can be so depraved that they would, approves these horrible things. But I think, when you take the word of God as your final authority on things, you realize these things are not merely human. This is a demonic thing.
Yes.
And that demonic principalities are orchestrating a lot of this, and bringing people into places of influence, who have really given themselves over and sold themselves to do evil. It's, I mean, to some extent, this also explains why, in politics, why everything changes but stays the same. There are certain things that are holding back attempts to reform, the government and to clean out the corruption. Corruption is endemic because the world is being dominated by demonic entities. And that's particularly clear when you see irrational anti-Semitism that closes its ears and eyes to the good that Israel actually does, and this anti-Semitism is self-destructive because it's selling itself into the hands of Islamic conquerors as well.
No, there's no doubt. This is global. Jake, I'm going to go over to you real quick. It's like a global, say a global media verbal pogrom against the Jews, but now it's gone from media to verbal to now physical on the street, threatening, attack. What should be the church's response?
Look, if September 11th won't wake up a society,
Yeah.
if the London Tube bombings won't, if the Boston Marathon bombings won't, if Australians coming home from vacation in Bali in body bags won't wake up Australia, what's going to? I see the element as God giving people over to a civilization worse than them. It's the way God allowed the Philistines or the Amalekites to conquer Israel because Israel turned against their faith and their beliefs. I think the Western world is under God's judgment, and Islam is something God is using to judge America, to judge Britain, to judge Europe, to judge Australia, New Zealand. I think it's something he's using to judge Israel. But I also know from the patterns of Scripture, whenever God uses a barbarian, be it an Amalek or a Philistine, or if he uses a Babylon or an Assyria, he first foretells the judgment on those civilizations he uses. They're only his stooges. They're only his instruments of correction of his own people. But then he obliterates them. The judgment of God is going to come on Islam brutally. The scriptures speak of it. Something terrible, a bloodbath that's unprecedented in the history of human civilization is going to take place in the Middle East. And most of the victims are going to be Arab. And Muslim. This is absolutely for sure. Divine judgment is coming on the Islamic world. I'm just thanking God that we're seeing the growth in the church in places like Iran and Egypt. May there be a harvest of souls out of Islam before that judgment comes. And the same is true for Israel and the Jews.
Yeah. Jacob, Mike.
It's going to happen to Israel, but first we need to pray that there's a harvest of souls coming to faith in Yeshua. As far as the church has to realize that we have an evangelistic mission. These things are of prophetic importance. They are foreshadows of a coming judgment. And we only have a certain amount of time to reach as many Jews and as many Arabs and Muslims as we can with the gospel before these judgments happen. If I was going to say anything, what the reaction to the church should be, it should be to pray and evangelize while we still can.
Yeah, amen. Pierre, what's the church's response? I mean, you mentioned a little bit earlier that this is the challenge to the church, but what do you think?
Yeah, it's. I think Jacob is 100% right. I think we need to go back to basics and focus on getting the word out, sharing the gospel while we can. You see the problems that are occurring all over the world with the church. It's people have become focused on the world, and they're not actually focusing on what we were set out to do, which was to go out and spread the gospel. And it is a concern, and it's something that I've been pushing with a lot of people, is that we need to get back to basics. We need to be getting out there, and we need to be doing our work while we can. The church is not doing what it should be doing. We've got all this man-centric stuff getting caught up in the church today, and you struggle to find a good church. It's because people are getting their focus taken away from what they're supposed to be doing versus what is actually, in front of them.
Yeah.
And so, I think that, and we see it in New Zealand as well. It's the church is a big problem. There's the whole approach to getting out there and focusing on the word seems to have disappeared. And a large part of this has been since COVID. The world has changed, and I think it's been one massive distraction. So yeah.
No, you're 100% right. And I'm going to go over into this final subject that we have just a few minutes left. Jacob, we'll start with you. This is the state of the church where you have N.T. Wright to be one of the major theologians. And we'll talk about N.T. Wright. We just did a video on him, and it should be out pretty soon. There's always been liberals who deny the resurrection, or the virgin birth of the deity of Christ or his coming. Now is somebody who appears to be, or has given some kind of credential that he's sort of an Orthodox conservative theologian. He's the Bishop of Durham. He's an Anglican New Testament scholar, supposedly, and all kinds of issues. Let's start with the resurrection. He says you could be a Christian and deny it.
He says that. He says a lot of other things. Look, I've had my disagreements with John MacArthur, and they have been serious at times. But he's absolutely right in his video and podcast about N.T. Wright. We've warned about N.T. Wright before. N.T. Wright is somebody I would broadly put in the class with Tim Keller, late Tim Keller, or with Richard Harvey in Great Britain. Somebody I would call a liberal evangelical. Look, MacArthur is right. The man's not a believer. He denies the fundamental essentials of the Christian faith. He's also a Darwinist, essentially, and he's also a replacement theologian advocate. His book dealing with Israel and the church was absurd. He ignored Romans 9-11. He ignored the heart of the New Testament's teaching on the subject. Yet he's accepted as being a theologian. He speaks at academic forums. There are pastors who've read his books. How can somebody not see through a false brother like N.T. Wright?
Yeah, Andy, over to you. We kind of discussed a little bit on I think it was Tuesday or Wednesday. Anglican, liberal theologian, but boy, he's got a lot of things, crazy stuff that is coming out now. Stuff he said a while ago, new thing now. But what's most concerning for me, it's obviously the denial of the resurrection, which is a foundation to the gospel, but then Genesis, then social issues like transgenderism, and it's on and on and on it goes. But your thoughts on him?
Well, I've not read a lot of Wright, but I never liked what I did. Look, the very fact that he's an Anglican bishop, that tells you that speaks volumes anyway. Even back in the 80s, you could see there was an awful lot of problematic Anglican bishops. And the Anglican Church wasn't even as bad then as it is now. There were still actually Anglican congregations that were actually evangelical solidly back in the 1980s. I wouldn't like to make the same assessment today, but just in regards to the resurrection issue, Paul says very clearly in 1 Corinthians 15 that if Christ has not been raised from the dead, then our faith is empty. It's vain, and we are found to be false witnesses of God. Paul says, because we testified concerning God that He raised Christ, from the dead. So this is what Wright is tolerating is out and out denial of the faith. As far as I'm concerned, it's complete heresy. But he passes it off as almost nothing. It's
the secondary issue for him. It's a secondary issue. The resurrection is secondary, tertiary, whatever you want to call it. It's not fundamental anymore.
It's got false teachers stamped all over it, this one. And
Christ was with the most foolish of all men, and he's the most foolish of the foolish.
Now we go to Pierre. Pierre, we watched some of the videos here before we got on. Some of the stuff N.T. Wright, Nicholas Thomas Wright said. I don't know how big he is in New Zealand with the Anglican congregations, but I heard he's pretty big in the UK. So your thoughts on just hearing him, it's just kind of like, what is the word that he likes to use?
Muddled.
Muddled. Oh yeah. Well, yeah, muddled. I think he's in a lot of ways he's muddled. He's asked these questions and he goes on and on and on, never getting an answer. But anyway, your thoughts.
Yeah, he's definitely muddled. Look, I must be honest, I didn't really know much about him before. You mentioned that one book of his was popular among Calvary Chapel pastors in the past, and I know I've seen it. So it was probably at my time when I was at a Calvary Chapel, but it would also explain some of the problems that we've seen coming out of the Calvary Chapel churches. You know, as Andy has said, this is pure heresy with what he's claiming. And my biggest concern is that Christians are no longer having discernment. They see things online and they see that it has the word Christian associated with it, and they don't test anymore. They just go with the flow and go, yeah, it must be true if he's saying it. You know, he's a Christian after all. I find when I discuss things with people, they don't go in and actually do research on these authors, these speakers. They just accept what they say and then they pass it on to everyone they know. And it's a real concern because someone like this, with this sort of heretical approach to the gospel, and if you're not actually understanding what he's saying and you're passing his information on to other people, other believers as fact, then you're joining in on that heresy. Christians really need to take a step back and start getting back again to basics and becoming good Bereans and actually testing everything that gets said on or things that they're watching, test it against the word before they go and happily share it. Some of the stuff that he was spouting on those videos was shocking, absolutely shocking. Mm-hmm. And again, the last point I want to make there is that what you see as well is there's an element of people that they like to make God in the form that they want God, and they don't want to accept the God of the Bible. And so you can have a God that accepts transgenderism, but actually they're making an idol of God. It's not the same God that we worship. And the people like the right, they just feed into these kind of people and their view of the world. So it's very dangerous.
Davey?
Yeah, well, there's a character in a children's book here in Australia which might be aptly suited for Mr. N.T. Wright. It's called The Muddle-Headed Wombat. I'm sure many Australians will remember that children's book, The Muddle-Headed Wombat. But look, N.T. Wright has had a big influence here in Australia, especially in the Reformed communities, at all the Reformed colleges and seminars. I actually did go to a 2-day seminar in the Geelong Reformed College there, which was a real eye-opener, which they actually influence a lot of the Baptist churches and that here too, Churches of Christ. A lot of denominations will, their pastors will all go down for this big powwow. But the big thing at the time was the New Perspectives of Paul that N.T. Wright had. He's bad news. He is bad news. I just saw a video before of him. Basically, someone wrote into his show, Ask Me Anything, and they live in a Mormon community, and they were Anglicans. They were concerned about, what do we do to help, my 5-year-old son? It's kind of like growing up in a Mormon community. We can only get to an Anglican church every so often. And basically, N.T. Wright says, just get my children's Bible for him. Have your Bible studies at home, but you nothing wrong with going to the Mormon church. It'll help you fit into the community and all the rest of it, all this kind of stuff. I'm paraphrasing, but it's just kind of like, look, he is bad news. Avoid him at all costs.
Yeah,
absolutely. No, absolutely. Yeah, N.T. Wright says Adam and Eve were primal pairs of hominids living among other hominids. when some strange force called them. I don't even know what he means by that. Jacob, final thoughts on N.T. Wright. I mean, he believes there were other humans at the same time as Adam and Eve, and there were some kind of, not humans, but humanoids of some sort that were called by some strange force. I mean, I don't know. Is he reading Star Trek, Star Wars? I don't know what he's reading. Not the Bible.
He's obviously a false brother. He's obviously a false brother and a pseudo-theologian. We've warned about him before. This is not the first time. My real concern, what disturbs me the most, is not N.T. Wright. It is the so-called born-again Christian pastors and academics and seminarians and seminary professors who have given place to him, who've shown him any approval or acceptance. That is my problem. False teachers and deceivers like him have always been around, and their numbers multiply in the last days, close of the age before Christ comes. That's a given. We know that. That's not the main problem. The main problem are people who claim to be born of the Spirit, who give place to him. If you're a pastor, or if you are a academic, Christian academic in the evangelical, traditional conservative evangelical sense, who's given place to someone like him, do yourself a favor. Do the body of Christ a favor. Go get an honest job.
Amen. Thank you, Jacob. Thank you so much. And boy, this is contributing to the apostasy. As you see, the apostasy comes first before the man of sin is revealed. This contributes to that, for sure. Absolutely.
One more thing I just want to mention too before I forget, to keep your eyes posted later on today. Marco has recorded a short video on N.T. Wright, so that will be up before the day is out. So please keep your eyes peeled for that on both Moriel TV and Devoid Truth YouTube channels.
Yeah, We'd also like to people, if you don't know, if you're one of the ones who don't know, the oldest monastery in the world, St. Catherine's, a traditional site of Mount Sinai, which it isn't, but that's where the monastery is located. I've been to it. It has one of the most important Christian scriptoriums of ancient biblical manuscripts in the world. That's why I was interested to visit it. It's Greek Orthodox. It's not in any biblical sense Christian, but they have a fantastic collection of very important manuscripts. It's where Sinaiticus was from, among others. It existed from the year 550 AD, CE, from the year 550. It existed before Islam existed. It existed before Muhammad. It was there from the time of the Emperor Justinian. The Egyptian government declared it illegal in a court decision and have essentially taken it away from Christian with a small c, but from the Christian world. Can you imagine if we took over the Kaaba, if Christians took over the Mosque of Aqsa or something like this, and said it's ours? That monastery was there before Muhammad existed, before Islam existed, and they've just taken it over. Not only that, it is a UNESCO, a World Heritage Site, and nobody in the United Nothing is saying anything about it.
Yeah, amen. Thank you, Jacob. Thank you, everyone, for watching. We're going to go to backstage. Get your questions. Send them over on Rumble. We won't be on YouTube or Facebook, but we'll be on all the other ones. X, Rumble, Telegram, Vimeo, Moriel TV, morieltv.org. Send them in. We'll take the questions. Jacob's got the answers. Better answers than N.T. Wright. Ask Jacob anything. I don't know how this guy gets Jacob, how does this guy get a show like that? Ask him. It's widely watched, and he's got terrible, terrible answers. I wouldn't ask him a question except for, when are you going to repent? Oh, but anyway.
The devil's the god of this world.
Yeah, absolutely. God bless you guys. We'll see you on Backstage.
Hello, and thank you for watching Moriel TV. There are so many things that are happening at Moriel Ministries worldwide, from the Philippines to Japan to India to Africa and back to Europe and the United States. So many of our brothers and sisters are spreading the good news of Jesus Christ to this lost world. We are so thankful for your prayers. God has been faithful and has blessed us in so many ways. If you'd like to partner with our efforts abroad and at home, please take a moment to click the link in the description and help us as the Lord leads you. Thank you very much, and God bless.